Welcome to the State of Calamity show. Today we're going to talk about the virus factory in Wuhan, China. As mentioned in a previous episode some time ago, there was considerable concern that the Wuhan Institute of Virology, located in Wuhan, China, the same vicinity of the origin of the COVID-19 virus, was a highly possible source of this pandemic. At first, that was simply a suspicion, that plus the fact that the pandemic really initiated essentially during the Chinese New Year itself, also increased the levels of suspicion surrounding the fact that there is what amounts to a biowarfare lab in Wuhan. As reported today on several major news outlets, essentially at this point in time, sources believe that the coronavirus originated in a Wuhan lab as part of China's efforts to compete with the U.S., according to Fox News. And according to CNN, the U.S. explores possibility that the coronavirus started in a Chinese lab, not in a market. There's quite a bit of news flying around in all directions that it appears there is increasing information and evidence that it may have, in fact, initiated in that lab. Now, there is no proof at this stage that we know of, and if there is proof and it came through classified channels, of course that proof would not be able to be disclosed publicly since it could compromise the safety of sources within various regimes, including within China. So even if there is proof at this point, it would have to be approached in really a essentially objective from the outside in discovery process, and it seems like that has now begun. What I do find quite suspicious is the fact that countries more closely aligned with China than others seem to have had a much better experience overall with fighting the COVID-19 virus than others. Without mentioning specific country names and creating a bunch of controversy, if you consider those countries most closely aligned with China, and if you look at their number of incidents and their rate of fatality, and the number of fatalities overall, it does appear that those with closer alignment to China have had more favorable outcomes overall and experiences with this pandemic than those that are in direct competition with China or that are not as closely aligned. For example, if you look at America versus China, China certainly defeated America in terms of the stats related to the coronavirus. Now, that begs the question, if this was created in a laboratory in China, perhaps in the Wuhan Institute of Virology, located in the Wuchang district in Wuhan, Hubei, China. I'm looking at them right now on Google Maps. The phone number is even listed. So if that is the case, would there not be an antidote or a vaccine? And if that is the case, would that or would that not have been somehow discreetly put to use in China to limit the damage that was done? And would that explain how quickly they seem to control things and put out the fire, as opposed to what we're experiencing in America and other nations at this time? So, of course, this will feed conspiracy theories for a very long time. I may not be the smartest person on the planet, in fact, far from it, but I was always quite suspicious that the coronavirus started right around the time of the Chinese New Year, that it started really in China, and that it started in the midst of a major trade war between the U.S. and China. Now, whether it was some type of sabotage or an elaborate plot, who knows? Someone might. I certainly don't. But I do know that as you evaluate the facts, it is certainly becoming more and more suspicious. The implications of this are profound. If it's determined conclusively by outside nations, whether or not China ever would admit it, that it did originate in the virology lab in Wuhan, China, if that is concluded by outside countries, that will have profound long-term consequences, not only in the form of possible lawsuits and legal actions. One could argue it would constitute essentially an act of war. Now, if it was by accident, I suppose it wouldn't be an act of war unless it was intentional, which might be quite hard to prove and may not even be the case. It could have simply been a leak or an accident of profound nature. or internal sabotage that was not the goal of the government to have occurred. We really do not know, although intelligence sources may or may not know such things. The public certainly does not, and I certainly do not. However, if it is determined by outside nations to have originated in Wuhan, China, there would be severe financial impact, possibly in the form of sanctions, possibly in the form of unimaginable outcomes by other nations, even shifting business interests, shifting manufacturing away from China to countries such as India and elsewhere, and it could have a devastating long-term impact on China. In fact, if it did start in Wuhan in the virology lab, and there was not a dire impact on the government of China as a result, that in itself would be quite alarming. There certainly would be enormous responsibility, not just in terms of lives lost, not just in terms of the trillions of dollars taken off of the world economies, but just overall the damage done to humanity as a whole. How would that ever be repaid? Even if China was willing to repay it, I do believe they could not afford to repay it. Thank you so very much for joining State of Calamity. We wish you all the best. Stay safe, wear masks, social distancing, using alcohol, best practices, and we hope to see you all again next time. Have a great day.